All right, we are now on day 9 of our crop production cycle. If you recall, on day 7 we harvested our wheatgrass because it was ready. Day 8 was our scheduled day to harvest our sunflower, but it wasn't quite ready. So now we're on day 9 and we are going to harvest our sunflower. And technically, I would say we're on day 8.5 because we sowed our sunflower in the evening. It is now morning on the 9th day, so technically we have another half day to go to get that full day. And at this point in the crop cycle, half a day can make a big difference. It's a measurable percentage of the whole crop cycle. So keep that in mind, whether you sow in the morning or the evening. That will make a difference in when you would harvest. So let's take a look at our sunflower here again. We'll just do a quick review. First of all, I prepared for harvest by making sure the tray was well watered. I checked it first thing this morning. It looked good, and I hadn't watered it since I think Friday. It is now Sunday, so it's in a good position there. Now, a couple things with this tray just to review. I'm not very happy with this tray. There's two things I look for the ideal crop, and this actually applies to everything. So one is the rate of germination, and that is, did all the seeds germinate? Now this tray in essence looks pretty good, but down in this corner here and in this corner here we had some low germination. So not a big deal, but it will affect yield. The other thing is uniformity. I like my trays to be just perfectly uniform, like you might imagine a carpet would look if you were right down looking at it. And this one is kind of all over the place. It's a little low here, a little low here, low where the germination wasn't good. Quite tall in this section, which is the far side reaching for the light. So there's a few factors here. Clearly I did not do a good job of paying attention to this crop. But you'll recall one of the things I mentioned was the first day of germination, when I usually have a heating pad on, I did not have that heating pad on. And I can kind of, when I look at a crop that's not performing well, and I'm trying to figure out what went wrong, the first thing I ask is, what did I do differently? And the thing that was different about this crop was that it didn't have a heating pad for the first day, which is the thing that really helps determine the cycle. Now this one got moved around a lot more than usually I would handle a crop because of this video series. Once again, once a crop is growing, I try to interact with it as little as possible. Every time you engage with the crop, actually it's an opportunity for something to go wrong. So this one got moved and rotated and stuff quite a bit. So that's probably a factor as well. That said, yeah, I've got a pretty decent looking crop of sunflower here. So with sunflower, there's a third thing I'm looking for, and that is the number of hulls that are still attached. Now hulls are, for all intents and purposes, a real pain in the ass. They are particularly a pain in the ass if you were doing commercial production, because you do not want a product to go out to your customers with hulls on it. This is especially important for restaurants that are serving to the public. Biting down on a sunflower hull is one of the most unpleasant food experiences you can have, simple as that. So this makes a bit more work. So I do a couple things to make hull management easier. First thing I do is actually, I give things a little brush like this. And I don't know if you can tell, but I can hear and see the different hulls popping off. So if things can come off easily, great. So that makes it a little easier there. So now I'm ready for harvest, and some people will actually go through and start picking off little bits of hulls like this. I don't have the patience for that. What I do is every time I make a salad, I just add it to a bowl in small portions. I pick the hulls as I go, and for home production, that's totally fine. I have no issue with that. So my tray is ready to go. I'm ready to harvest. As I talked about before, I'm always harvesting with a knife, and I'm harvesting with a very sharp knife. Some people like to use scissors, but as a reminder, scissors, I'm just setting my scale here. Scissors do not cut like a knife does. Scissors tear. And so I've done some previous videos showing what the difference is right at the stem there. There's much more surface area when you use scissors, and those ones are going to break down a lot quicker than if you use a knife. So two processes to sharpen a knife. I won't go into detail here, but one is just using a stone to get the sharpen, and then 2 is using a steel or a honing tool just to basically to fine tune that. And in order to keep it sharp, you can continue to use the honing steel to keep it sharp, basically. Okay, so my cut here, just like with wheatgrass, I want to cut really, really low to the surface because I want to get as much of that mass out of there as possible. So I do it in little sections. The blade, because it's sharp, goes right through there. No problem at all. And these go right into my bowl there. So the reason I'm putting them into a bowl now is right away I want to know what my yield was. I like to record all my yields. Just really helps me keep track of what production looks like, what my sort of return is on the investment I've put in. And it also tells me, yeah, like if I'm getting higher or lower yields, I can really track that. I can tell you so far this is a very disappointing tray. Lots of smaller shoots in here, and really just highlights the importance that I've stressed time and time again of the germination stage. You need really, really good germination in order to get a good crop. The analogy I often use is with people who are sick in childhood. They often have a hard time being healthy adults. It's like it's really, really hard to recover from that. So I think of the same thing here, like the life cycle here is only 9 days and childhood is a day or two. So if you don't do a good job with that, then yeah, it's going to make things harder later. Okay, so my yield here is 390 grams. That's very, very disappointing. It's almost half of what I would usually get, about 650 grams. So pretty low yield there. Doesn't surprise me. I'm not too bothered about it. I've still got a good stock in the fridge, but it really is, if I was counting on this for more of my nourishment, you know, I would be getting half of the yield as usual, which means I'm getting a much less return on my seeds as well. I've used soil, I've used seeds, and so that lower yield actually does have an impact. So now that I'm finished here, my tray goes into my compost system. What I do with these, I got a few extra stragglers here. What I do with these now is I will take them to the sink. I'll fill this with cold water, let it sit for about 30 seconds, dump that cold water out, and then actually just put them right into the fridge. Now ideally you would do that and then put them into a spinner to dry them off and put them in the fridge. I'm actually finding I'm getting pretty good storage for with just that process. But if you wanted to store them for longer, cold and dry is really important, and so that drying is an important part of the cycle. So this is the end of our sunflower cycle, and if we were doing a regular cycle, we would sow our next sunflower crop now. I won't do that here because we've already covered that, but it'll be something I probably do later today. Now, because we're doing 2 crops, just to sort of end this cycle in a very Tarantino-esque way, there's actually another cycle going here already for the wheatgrass. It's on day 2 of the next cycle. So we harvested our wheatgrass on day 7. Right afterwards, I sowed another batch, and so this one's on day 2 here. I'll admit I soaked that one a little longer than I would have liked. I did an overnight soak because I forgot about it. And so I'll be curious to see how that one does as well. But basically I've got my next cycle going there. I'll have my next cycle of sunflower going here, and then I'll just be rotating through there, sometimes rotating these trays, sometimes moving them around, just depending on the different needs of the crops. Now that my sunflower is out of here, I can also turn off my light. So I've got my whole system on a timer there, both my lights and my heating pads. The wheatgrass does not need a heating pad. It likes to germinate in cooler conditions. So basically, my system doesn't require any energy at this point. So there's no point having this stuff on if I don't need it. It doesn't use a lot of energy, but it does take some energy. So leaving that off makes a lot of sense. When I start my next batch of sunflower, once again, I'll put the system back on. I'll put the sunflower on the heating pad. But the lights will only come on when something is uncovered. There is no need for them at all to be on during the germination period because there's no photosynthesis taking place. So that is our overview of the crop production cycle for both sunflower and wheatgrass. And to a great extent, like 90 to 95%, this is what all crop cycles look like. you know, whether it's 7 days, 10 days, even 20 or 30 days, you're looking at a germination period in the dark with pressure. You're going to uncover that crop so it can photosynthesize. It's going to spend its time growing to a certain point at which you're going to harvest. And during that time, you need to determine what kind of watering you're going to do. You can water from above or you can water from below. That's going to vary by crop and by system. Both systems work equally well. You just need to know which one works best for you. If you're more prone to mold or issues, it's better to come from below. If you're not having issues and you like the crop to get washed, then you can do it from above. As I talked about before, I like to do a combination of those two things. So that's the end of this series. Our next series is going to be looking at different experiments that you can do, that you should be doing to answer questions related to your production. I see on a lot of the different forums, people are asking very simple questions and getting very simple answers. And because the question isn't detailed enough, the answers people are getting are not actually correct, or they're not complete. And so in the beginning of my production days, I did a lot of experimenting, and I still actually draw on those results quite a bit. So I'm going to show you how to set up an experiment. We're going to look at soaking time and covering time as two sort of examples of things that you can do experiments with. And those are two really crucial things that people have a lot of questions about and tend to be unsure about. So we're going to show you the results of that, but also talk about how we set up the experiment, how we document that as well, and that way when we're doing it, we know we're getting good results. If you put bad information in, you're going to get bad information out, and so setting up your experiment well is going to make sure you get good results. So I hope that was helpful in terms of crop cycles. Watch for the experiment series coming soon. We have lots of other content on my YouTube page at youtube.com/garlicpatch, and then you can check out our online courses at microgreens.teachable.com. Have yourself a good Sunday.